Verbal reasoning is the hardest section on the UCAT, and there's a lot of variety out there. People generally find it very hard to improve in, hard to finish, and hard to get a real grasp on getting good at it. So I've been tutoring the UCAT for 6 years now, and I basically will run a one-off workshop which will collate everything I know about verbal reasoning and hopefully give you the answers that you've been wishing for. When to use the keyword approach, when to use the passage first approach, how I look at answer options, how my students have fared, and what strategies they used to reach the highest VR scores possible. You'll hear from students who've done well and from students who have struggled a bit with their feedback. And I've collated all this experience in a one-off workshop for you. This is designed to complement any tutoring you're receiving. So if you've already got tutoring so far, that's okay. It's just one-off for 1 hour, and I guarantee you'll take something away. So, given that most people are aiming for 2,400 minimum, even if you get a 900, perfect 900 in quantitative, you still need 1,500 points between your VR and DM. And for most people, you need at least 700 in VR, if not 750 or 800. So, this might be something that is a game changer for you. Thursday, April 9th at 3:30 Melbourne, Sydney, Queensland time. Just remember, daylight savings is the 5th of April, so there will be some time zone changes. If you can't make that time, there's a recording available for you. And any funds that I raise from this, they're all going to charity. So nothing to lose by coming. It's for a good cause. And I will share everything I know about verbal reasoning. And I hope we can do the best by the people who are doing it tough at the minute, specifically children and families impacted by floods in Sri Lanka last year. So, what will you get out of this workshop? And I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek at the end of this video. So, I'm going to talk about when to use the different methods, what you should look for in terms of quickly getting the gist of the passage, the tone of the passage, how you can tell based on the wording of the answer whether it's more likely or less likely to be right, and just going through a few worked examples with some key skills. I aim to push you, but also to give you new ideas on what to practice. Because if you leave the session with even two or three new things and you say, all right, this is some things I can work on. I'm going to now do my practice, work on these things and see how I go. I think that's a win. How should you be practicing verbal reasoning? My advice is to do timed sets, 44 questions in the allocated 23 minutes. And before you do every set, think of 1 to 2 action points that you're going to work on. Be very specific and say, all right, this set I want to work on getting every question below 45 seconds. Or this set I want to work on trying to analyze the answer options, not testing more than two keywords per question or two answer options per question is a better way of saying it. And so after you've done that 23-minute set, then you think, how did I go with those 1 to 2 things? The second thing that's important is you have a log with your scores so you can see how you're improving with time. VR will go up and down. It's normal if your score drops 5 for a small period, but you need to be improving to hit those target scores. It's not all of a sudden going to go nothing and then jumping unless you practically change something. And so, but the benefit of attending the workshop is I will show you things that you can change. Now, let's get into the content. People have improved drastically before. I've had students score 2,510, get into unis across Australia, and there'll be students from Australia, there'll be students from New Zealand, the UK. One student came from the UAE, Hong Kong. So anywhere you are, make sure you're signing up because the recording's always available if you're away too. And there'll be something that you can learn and take away. So for those of you who are regular followers of my channel, you may have seen this table before. Essentially, it's a bunch of factors I consider when I'm looking at the answer options. And this is just one of many tools that we'll be discussing at the workshop on April the 9th. So the most important thing is strong and weak language, right? If the question has, or if the answer option has words like may, some, could, can, and might, it's very hard to be false. But it's 50-50 between true and can't tell. It's hard to make a true statement with the word could, right? So, you could say that global warming could continue to rise in the future, and that seems a reasonable statement. So maybe that could be true. But it In when we get into the hypotheticals, it also could be can't tell. This could happen. It also could not happen. Strong language is quite hard to be true. Think about making a true statement with the word always. It's pretty tricky. So it's more likely to be false, but it still can be can't tell. Then we have the general tone of the passage. For most UCAT passages, assume they're more journal-like, scientific, neutral tone. So the answers which have a more formal, objective language are more likely to be correct, whereas those which are a bit more colloquial, more opinionated, particularly with words like should, these people should do this, or this is a good example of this. This person did enough. What does enough mean? Or this is too big or too difficult. These are all subjective interpretations. Be careful with causation because it's very hard generally to infer that something caused something else. It's easier to say this is correlated with these things influenced or they moved directly or indirectly. If things align with the gist of the passage, that might allow you to get the answer without looking at the passage or without reading the text. Whereas if you sense that it's not really talking about the main topic of the passage, then, or if it's going against what the passage is saying, then you can just rule out those answers straight away. A good answer will have quite a broad phrasing. So if I say that art is culturally significant, it's a very general statement. I haven't said particularly much there, but it's very hard to dispute that. Whereas if I said, you know, Joe Blank is a 6'4" male with a brown mustache who lived in this area of Marseille. Any part of that sentence can be changed, right? What if his mustache was black? And that's what I call a removable word, a word which you can take out of the sentence and it still makes sense. So if I said Joe Blank lived in 1853 and had a mustache, it still makes sense. But if I say Joe Blank lived in 1853 and had a brown mustache, now that brown I can swap with any other word, and it's so easy to make a true statement false or a true statement can't tell. So watch out for these words. Similarly, the more clauses or parts that an answer has, the more parts that they can trick you with. If I say, that yellow is a color and chicken is a color, part of that statement is true. Yellow is a color, but part of it's false. And people can sometimes, obviously that's an easy example, but people can sometimes be put off by the fact that part of the answer is true, but then they haven't tested the other part of the answer, which is false or can't tell. Now, hypotheticals, if this would happen, if this will happen, it's generally going to be can't tell. Now, watch out, and we'll talk further in the session about when a particular keyword will appear versus when it will have to be inferred versus when it will be expressed in synonyms. So they're not always going to give you the exact word in the question and the passage. They might use some synonyms or some different phrasing. And we'll talk about how to look out for that. We'll talk about the noun change further and other ways you can get a better idea on what the correct answer is from the wording of the answer. And this is helpful because it tells you which options you need to test and in what order. So instead of blindly testing A, then B, then C, then D, maybe you can say, all right, it's not A because that has the word will in it. B could be right. C has a removable word, so it's maybe not. D it doesn't really align with the gist of the passage. So let's start by testing B. If that's right, we've got it. If that's not right, then maybe we'll go and pick C and move on. In that way, you can get through 4 answer options whilst only looking for one in the passage. This is only the start of verbal reasoning strategy. There's a lot to learn, and I'm pretty confident that there'll be something in this session that is different to what you've been taught previously. So to sign up, click the link in the description and make sure you stay tuned and make sure you tell your friends about it as well, because this is all going towards a good cause and it will help yourself, will help others as well. Thanks very much, guys, and I hope to see you at the workshop on April 9th.